the FNL Network talk show.
Hello and welcome to the FNL Talkshow Network. I am your host, David Stowe, and I have my co-host Diana and Corey here tonight. How you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing all right. Actually, we're doing pretty good. I was speaking to the producers this week, and they said that we've had a major uptick in the last 3 months. So a lot of our viewers out there have been just going up and up and up. So that's great news. That's good. That means we're all doing our job, and people are actually filing in, seeing what's going on, and enjoying the show. So that's good news. So anybody out there that's watching, anybody out there that's watching, tell your friends, family, like it, do what you have to do, tell your grandma, I don't care who it is, just get them involved. You know, we talk about multiple things in here, everything from fashion to politics to whatever's going on in the world to crazy stuff to, you name it, we talk about it. So it's a lot of fun on here. So tonight we're going to do something a little bit different. We're actually, instead of me having all the questions, we're going to go ahead and have, we're going to start off with having everybody here do one question each. And it looks like my computer is glitching out again. I don't know what's going on with it, but that's kind of weird. Hopefully the sound's not messed up, but
how do you
not a
move
demon.
around so fast like that?
It's weird. It's not a demon. I don't understand it. So I know it's crazy. Well, I might have to pump out and pop back. Oh, there it goes again. I'm stopped, I think. I don't know. Something's going on. It must have something to do with this AT&T thing all week long, right?
Yeah.
I'm on a landline. So let's go ahead and start off. Diana, why don't you start us off with a good question? And while you're doing that, I might stop my video and restart it.
Okay, I'm so sorry. It's so funny. Those of you at home, if you could see it, it looks like he's just bopping around. It's really entertaining. My question I'm bringing up today is about this restaurant in the West Village. It's, of course, an expensive one of those like hoity-toity restaurants. It's called the Frog Club, and Chef Liz Johnson made a list of 10 rules that will get you kicked out of her restaurant. So I'm just gonna share them with you all. So no call, no showing for a reservation, that'll get you kicked out. Taking photos inside, this includes bathroom selfies. Being rude or inappropriate to our team, especially Tony. I don't know who Tony is. Stealing from or vandalizing the restaurant, touching the memorabilia, thinking about touching the memorabilia, lying about it being your birthday, canceling a reservation more than thrice, becoming dangerously intoxicated, requesting a free meal, and kissing the chef without her consent. Now, some of these rules are understandable. Like, obviously, don't steal things from a restaurant. Don't touch anything that you're not supposed to touch. But some of them, I'm like, okay, you can't judge what people do in the bathroom. That's their own time. Like, I don't know. If you want to take a mirror selfie, do what you got to do. And I feel like half the thing about going out to dinner, like, people like to take pictures of their food. Just like we mentioned on last week's episode, if you take a picture at a concert, if you take a picture of your food, I think it's a huge compliment to the chef because you obviously like what's in front of you enough to share it with your friends and family. And obviously, like becoming dangerously intoxicated, we don't want that either. But there was also kissing this chef without her consent. And I'm like, is this a problem she has on a normal basis? Because then there's also a menu item for $1,000 where you can kiss her. And I'm like, does she just have a big head? I don't know. So my question for all you guys is, what do you think about these rules? Do you think they're reasonable? Do you think it's ridiculous? And would you go to an establishment like this, or do you think it's going to deter people from coming?
You want to go first, Corey, or me?
Yeah, I can go first. Yeah, I mean, I think they're trying to deter certain types of people, obviously. And a lot of that seems pretty tongue-in-cheek because, there's things that seem pretty obvious, like, don't set the restaurant on fire. There's a couple things included there that are pretty obvious, like, so it's a little tongue-in-cheek for sure. But just like we talked about with the rock concert, too, there's they're trying to develop an atmosphere there. Mm-hmm. They're trying to create an environment there, and I can understand people wanting the experience to be genuine, or like we said last time, a little more intimate, and therefore, keep the phones away or whatnot. Could be a marketing thing too, right? They want the proper pictures of their food, or they don't want people taking those pictures and using them in inappropriate ways too, or using them to make false claims about the restaurant. There's all kinds of things they could do. So yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, you don't have to go to the restaurant, just like the concert, right? You don't have to go to the restaurant. The people that are going to go are going to love it. Obviously, the band you mentioned last week, I won't mention them either. But I mean, if I want to go see them, which I would love to do, but if I was going to go see them, if those are the rules they want, and that's their show and that's the way they want it to go, so be it. If I want to go, you know what I mean? I totally get what you're saying. Of course, we all want the memories, we all want all of that captured, but ultimately, it's up to the proprietor, right? It's up to them.
Yeah.
So I understand that. They're just making the kind of environment that they want to create. So I don't necessarily see a problem with it. And I think the fact that it's tongue in cheek for a lot of that kind of makes it, follow these rules. Some of them are pretty basic, and some of them, if they need to, they can say, hey, because it doesn't say you can't get drunk. It says dangerously drunk, right?
Yeah.
I'm not
But then
exactly sure what
also,
that constitutes.
yeah, I feel
Go
like
ahead.
that could be subjective because, she doesn't want people kissing her either. So
Right,
Dangerously drunk can get you too close to kissing, right?
right.
exactly. That's
Yeah,
the one that like blew my mind the most. I'm like, how conceited do you have to be to make a rule like don't kiss me? Or is there a line of people out the door trying to kiss the chef? I know there's aprons that say that. Like maybe she wore it one day and people took it a little too seriously.
Well, I saw the article too in her picture, and I tell you what, man, I hope that's $1,000 discount for kissing her because I was not impressed. I was like, I mean, it. I'm like Corey. I thought it was tongue in cheek. I thought it was funny, but like all advertisement, any advertisement is good advertisement usually.
Mhm.
Whether it's negative or positive, people are going to want to go see what the heck's it all about. But for the most part, it could be. There's a lot of restaurants out there that have crazy rules that are tradition or whatnot. But I'm almost trying to figure out whether or not when they wrote the article, if they were actually upset, if it was tongue in cheek, or was it I mean, I don't know. It's interesting to think. I mean, they better have gold flakes and all that food for that much. And I've seen the menu or some of the stuff on the menu, and that was pretty interesting as it was.
Yes.
I don't know. I mean, what was it? Bacon wrapped filet mignon.
Mhm.
How big are these plates? What are they doing? There was a lot of celebrities that go to it, so maybe they're well known. I know they had a situation before that was a pretty rough marriage, I think it was, or
Yes.
boy, and he was abusive to her, or they were abusive to each other. So who knows what the heck they were thinking? But
Mhm.
either way, we're talking about it now on the FNL talk show. So
Yeah.
it did something to get people involved, so
True.
maybe people will start coming out. It's good to know.
Mhm.
Well, there was another question that came up, which is right along the lines of weird, if you ask me. And that question is about a couple that have a shoe line now that's worth multi-million dollars. And they've had over, 46 million people have looked at it. And it's interesting because what they're doing is they're cutting off the soles of their shoes, and they feel like it's part of the world. They feel closer to the earth. And I don't know about you guys, but that sounds really weird. I'll give you my opinion once I find out what you guys think about it. What about you, Corey? What do you think about that?
I know if they're going to be doing that, they don't want to be walking around in San Francisco right now. That's for sure. There's a whole lot of stuff they could be stepping in right there. Yeah, I mean, it seems. What's the? I just. It's one of those ridiculous things. What's the point? If you're gonna go barefoot, go barefoot. If that's what you want to do. If they're going off on this, oh, it gets you closer to the earth. Yeah, so does just walking around with no shoes. So why cut the soles off of shoes and
Well,
sell
no, they're trying to
fake
sneak
product?
it in.
Well, I guess so. The whole point, yeah, trying to look like that or whatever, I guess. But I mean, what trying to feel like you're one with the earth and all of this while you're clearly just making money. And you're just as big a part of the system as anybody else is. And that's one of those ways to set yourself aside and go, oh, look at me, I'm special, virtue signaling, basically. Well, we're all about the earth and plants and everything else, but it just seems pretty ridiculous to me.
Well, if you
It's
look at the comments, it
pointless.
seems like there's a lot of ridiculousness in it too. How you touching the earth if you're walking on a cement floor, or a
Yeah,
wooden floor?
cement, asphalt, and everything else, and likely living in a city where you're actually just on top of someone else in an apartment building, and you got, you're nowhere closer to the earth by walking around barefoot. So, if through the city, because I
Right?
guarantee you, like the people, in areas out like where we're at, you get desert around you. I'm not walking across that desert with these shoes that have no soles just so I can feel closer to the earth, stepping on scorpions and goat heads, and yeah, I'm good, man. I'm good.
Uh,
And like you said, the ones that are going to buy it are going to be in the cities, and it's all concrete and asphalt. So
you haven't lived if you haven't stepped on a goat head or a tick. What is it? Not tic tac. Tic tac. What are those little that toy with the ball and the
Jacks.
tacks? The
oh,
mom used to use
Jacks,
Jacks.
Jacks.
Yeah.
Step on one of those or a goat head, they're about the same thing. Those things will pop your tires on a bike.
Yep.
What about you, Diana?
I think it's stupid. Just putting it plain and simple, because I feel like if there was a gun to my head and someone was like, you have to pick a part of the shoe that you need to go without, I would keep the soles, because that protects the bottom of your foot, which is taking most of the brunt of your weight in walking. I thought of New York City. You thought of San Francisco. I thought of New York City. I would not want to be walking around New York City with everyone's gum on the concrete and glass bottles and people peeing on the sidewalk. First of all, so many thoughts. I can't even articulate them. What do these people's feet look like when they get back into their home? I don't want to step in my house. Like, what? And then they got to walk around their actual floor. So they're bringing the gunk from outside and all the germs from outside into their home that's supposed to be clean. You clean your floors. Like, it just seems like a big waste of money, and even bigger waste of time. It's not cute. There's just zero appeal to it for me. And then on a hot summer's day, I feel like we've all done the thing when you get out of the pool and your foot hits the concrete and you're like, ow, 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 and you're walking back to your lounge chair. Just imagine doing that 24/7. I feel like that's the marketing strategy for these shoes. Like, no, thank you.
Oh, exactly. Well, our ancestors decided to make some kind of a leather sole so that they could protect their feet as well. Maybe, I don't know, maybe these people have calluses that are like soles or hooves now. It's either way, it's disgusting. Think about, I mean, obviously they've never ever used a urinal in a bathroom, because a lot of those guys that use those urinals in there, they need to, choke up in the bag, get a little bit closer to the plate, because that stuff's all over the
They got
place.
stormtrooper aim half the time, right?
Right? It's all over the place. That's disgusting. And you make a good point. I didn't even think about the hot asphalt, walking around on that. That's
Mhm.
just it makes no sense to me. And like Corey said, it sounds to me like it's another fad. They're just trying to get a quick buck, or the hippies. What was interesting was I think they were doing it in Australia. If there's any country you don't want to be walking around barefoot, it would be Australia, because I think Australia has bugs and insects and animals in it that even the devil would be afraid to walk around.
And
So,
plants. I'm sure they
you know,
have like cactus and stuff like that, cacti and all that.
heck,
Or
have them walk around the desert out here just once. Go through the from here to the end of my block through that desert there and watch how many goat heads they rack up. That's just it's disgusting in so many different levels, and
And
it's
I might take my
probably
chances
ugly.
with all of that rather than walking through San Francisco right now still.
Oh yeah.
They
And then
got
they
that
said so
app, right?
they have an app on there for it.
There's an app for all the human feces on the streets.
Oh, it's
That was how
disgusting.
they decided to solve the problem. They just made an app so you can say, like a sig alert, you're like, oh, there's human feces here, and they got an app and it's just littered with it. So
Wow, that's just
yeah,
disgusting. And
and
we're
they're
not
doing
even,
fun
uh,
needles and stuff too.
you know, uh, they also have worms that can crawl up, pinworm, things that can crawl up into your feet. They get into your intestines and come out of your butt at night, and you have to. It's gross. It's the most disgusting stuff in the world. Who- uh, What were they thinking? That's all I got to say. It's absolutely crazy.
protect your feet.
Protect your feet. That's what you need. So, let's move on to the next one. Corey's got a pretty interesting question, So Corey, why don't you go ahead and hit us with this question that you wanted to talk about here?
Yeah. So it's just an interesting one. I've been thinking about it. It's an election year, obviously. So there's a lot of politics going on, a lot of we're all getting the scam calls and the spam calls and everything else from just a million different people trying to tell us how to think, how to vote, what to do. And of course, so all of these subjects are going to be coming up. A lot of cultural stuff, a lot of social stuff, and political stuff obviously deals with all that. So my question was really just in either in your daily life or at your work, when sensitive cultural or political stuff comes up, how do you approach that? Right? How do you handle that? How do you take that and work with that? Are you just kind of blunt and straightforward and don't care, or do you just ignore it as often as humanly possible? I was gonna choose you to go first, David, but you're running
Tweak it
around
out
like,
again.
yep.
I'll fix it.
Stepped in something in San Francisco, bro. Be careful. All right, Dana, why don't
It's
you go
bad.
first then?
So especially when it comes to cultural stuff, I try to listen first before I form an opinion because if I'm not a part of that culture, what do I know to speak on your experience? I just simply don't. The world is so nuanced and everyone sees it in a different way. And unfortunately, people are treated differently because of their background, how they look, what they believe in, who they love, you name it. So if it comes to something where like I cannot relate to, I've never experienced it, I'm just not going to speak on it until I hear what that person has to say and I can empathize with them or I can form an opinion based off their experience that they're living through. But on the other hand, when it comes to stuff like human rights and people being racist, I'm not afraid to like jump down people's throats, to put it bluntly, and just do the right thing. Like my philosophy is just like don't be a jerk. And I feel like unfortunately, and I feel like we touched on this a few episodes back, the way the politics are going today, people are just running around and are just, how do I want to put it? They're just being jerks. Like, unfortunately, like this wasn't as big of an issue years ago. I mean, it was before I was born, but for a while it seemed like things were starting to get better. And then the 2016 election came along and like all of a sudden people are feeling like they could say racist stuff again, or they're feeling like they can make fun of people for their backgrounds or their sexuality and we're discriminating again. And I'm just like, where is this coming from? So when it comes to things like that are unfortunately just so tied deeply to politics now ever since 2016, I'm going to stand up for the right thing. And I don't care if I hurt someone's feelings who's being hurtful in the first place. You know what I mean? Like, in my opinion, my being hurtful to a hurtful person, it cancels it out. It's doing a good thing. Like, I'm always going to stick up for what is right. I'm never going to judge anyone based on their race, background, who they love, what they look like. Like, as long as you're a good person, I'm on your side. So, I mean, I think I answered that in a really roundabout way. So I hope that was okay.
Yeah. What about you, Dave?
I'm kind of the same. I mean, I'm Mr. Inappropriate as it is. Everybody knows that. You know that more than anything. And but I at my work in itself, I'm a teacher, so I have to really watch what I say. We have a lot of people out there that like to push their agendas on, kids, and I'd be upset if somebody was pushing that agenda on my kid. But there is a difference between pushing an agenda and, speaking your mind or at least giving your opinion. And I agree with Diana that you have to be able to understand or at least listen. I mean, I don't really have to understand what the hell they're saying. I'm like, okay, that's different. That's interesting. But I think the biggest problem that a lot of people have is they want to say something, but they're afraid to say it out loud. And so everybody tiptoes around each other. I tend to just say it in the nicest way I can. And hopefully they don't come back and want to cancel me out. And we've talked about this on the show, cancel culture. Everybody wants to cancel you out for your opinion. And I think it's kind of ridiculous. we all have different opinions, especially on this show, and I think that's a great thing. You know, we're happy talking to each other. We enjoy it. We don't have to agree with each other. And the problem that a lot of people out there don't understand is if you don't think like they don't look like they do, and you don't believe like they do, then you're just wrong, and you need to get the hell out of Dodge. And I think a lot of people treat people like that, and it's one of the things that bugs me the most about society right now. I've never liked cancel culture in the first place due to the fact that, you know, I think it's a free country. If I don't like it, you know, I'm not then like you're talking about the concert. If you don't like it, don't go to the concert. If you don't like the show, don't go to the show. You know, don't punish the people that it's their art and they're trying to put it out there, you know, and for the most part, we can all say no and walk away. There's a lot of I have a multitude different types of music I like to listen to, and I try to keep it as safe as possible with all the students at school. And even though the music that's out today doesn't seem to be real music, the problem is it's all cussing. So there's only so much I can put on before it. But for the most part, I think religion and politics are two things that people take very dearly to heart. And when it comes to how they feel about it, they want to make you believe. And that's the problem. You cannot go into a conversation expecting the other person to agree with you by the time you're done with it. And if they don't, then they're canceled and they're no good. So
I wanted to touch on, because you brought a really good point about like people tiptoeing around other people. And I feel like there's so much power in messing up and then learning, because, you know, unfortunately, like we're not right all the time. Everyone's learning every single day. So I do agree that like it does us wrong in a way, because now we're preventing people from learning others' experiences because we're afraid to make those mistakes. And there's a difference between someone just going out and being a jerk and, you know, being racist or whatever, or discriminatory, or there's a difference between someone saying something that they were taught wrong their whole life, and it's like, no, it's this way, and had I not messed up, I wouldn't have learned and grown from that. But there's like there's a side to every coin, and then there's also like the people who have been discriminated against, like they're also, should they have to be explaining things all the time? Like I can't imagine how exhausting that much must be. But it's a really great point. Like if we don't mess up as humans and we don't have hard conversations, how are we going to grow as a society?
right. And I mean, I don't want to be friends with people that are fake in the first place. And a lot of people are fake.
Exactly.
And I am what I am. You get what you get. And if they don't like that, I don't know what to say, you know. And you know, who doesn't want to be liked? I mean, there's a lot of people out there that everyone wants to be liked to a certain degree. Some people will sit there and tell you, you know, I don't care what anybody thinks. I'll say what I want, do what I want. But really deep down, they do, because they wouldn't say that if they cared, you know, if they didn't care. So you're right. And as far as I'm concerned, people that are coming at me, if they're going to be, like I said, if they're going to be absolutely racist, or they're just throwing stuff around, you know, I mean, I'm just going to say it straight up. I am a middle-aged white guy living in America right now. Anything I say or do will be held against me, and I am guilty regardless of what people think. And I cannot get away with it. There's just nothing I can do about it. In fact, I had a situation where a student wasn't doing really well in all of her classes, and I became the easy go-to for her parents to get kicked out of, or get her out of class, because instead of me screaming and yelling like some teachers do, or ignoring it, when I tell them to quiet down, I put on it was a YouTube dog whistle you can hear, because it's a real thin sound, you can barely hear. It's like going to a hearing test at the doctor's. And when kids would hear, they're like, oh, he's, you know, oh, calm down, be quiet. She told her parents it hurt. Rather than say, you know what, suck it up, buttercup, you know, you need to, you know, deal with it. What's up with your grades? They went to the school, tried to get me in trouble, said that I'm abusing them, you know, and it's corporal punishment in California, apparently. And I'm like dumbfounded with, you're kidding me, right? You know, it made no sense to me. So people are going to use what they want, and that's the other thing, is there's other people out there that will defend the person just because that person, you know, got butt hurt, regardless if they're right, you know. And gone are the days that we can toughen up and deal with it, you know. And so I think it's definitely, the workplace is a very hard place to bring it up. And it's kind of like dating in the workplace. Just don't do it if you don't have to, unless you guys all kind of like we're in kind of in a workplace right now. And we could talk, you know. I'm not gonna get off here and say, oh, Diana hates me now. You know, what am I gonna do tomorrow? She's not gonna want to do a show with me again. You know, it's ridiculous. If not, then what are we doing here?
Exactly.
Well, you guys both brought up listening first. That's interesting. I'm gonna have to try that next time. I'm pretty blunt about everything. You know, Dave likes to always say, "Oh, tells the truth no matter what." But all of us mind our P's and Q's when you first meet somebody or when you're just out in public and there's random people at work. And in my life, I try to get closer to people so that we can open up and talk about all this stuff, so that our total interactions do not just consist of, "Hey, how's the weather? How's it going?" Right? That's no way to live in my personal experience or in my personal preference. That's no way to live. Right? I want to know, what do you really think? Why do you really think?
Boring.
Yeah, it's boring. And when there are people that have differences, like that's I want to talk, but I don't want to dance around it. Like you said, we're always walking on eggshells. And it's said pretty frequently that, in order to just even talk to each other, you have to risk being offended. And opening your mouth and saying something, you're risking offending somebody. It's going to happen. And I'm one of those people that says, well, so what if you get offended, right? Half the problem we're talking about right now is not necessarily, are we going to say offensive things? Are there offensive things that we have to talk about? It's why, and that to me is what cancel culture is about. Why is the offensiveness being taken so far? Why are you taking such an offense?
It's because I'm offended that you're offended that I'm offended.
Yeah, the whole, you can, any book you look at it, leadership across, I'm a historian. You go across the world and you look at these leaders, and everyone in essence is going to tell you that, you're going to have to be offended, but what are you going to do about it? How does it hurt you? How does it affect you? If we don't talk about these more serious matters and get into the details of it, we're losing out. Like you were saying earlier, it's just kind of like when you lost my train of thought on that one. Sorry. Yeah, for
Squirrel.
Yeah, too many things to chase there on this one. But yeah, let me just get back to my point. I am blunt about it because I want to know. And Dave knows this very well. When we get together with family to us is everyone that walks through that door, right? When we're in the house together, you come, everyone is welcome to sit down at our table for dinner, for Thanksgiving, to play games, no matter what it is, right? But we come from I'm not even going to say generation. We come from a group of people, right? We grew up with everybody. We grew up in Southern California with everybody, every walk, every, race, every creed is around us all the time. It's never been that big a thing to us. But we come from a style that likes to offend each other on purpose in the beginning, because that's how we protect each other, if that makes sense. Like if I got a buddy, and let's say my buddy has the most odd-shaped head ever, I'm going to be the first one to make fun of him. And I'm going to dig into that pretty heavily, right? And I'm going to make him laugh about it until he's laughing about it. And then no one else can ever actually make him feel terrible about that, right? And if they try to, now he knows that he's got me on his side now. If that makes sense. It's like making fun of my little brother or my older brother. I can make fun of them all I want. You don't get to make fun of them though, right? And so I like to come from a place where it's like, let's literally talk about all of it. Let's get it all out in the open so that I know who you are, you know who I am, you know what I'm about, I know what you're about. Let's just sort through all of that and realize at the end of the day, everybody's welcome at the table. But what we don't particularly like is when there's a whole bunch of things that we're not supposed to talk about. A whole bunch of things that we have to completely and utterly ignore because somebody's going to be afraid to be offended. And that was the point I was getting at with leaders earlier about being afraid to be offended. We were taught, and all these leaders talk about, like, the only way somebody can offend you is if you allow them to, right? And that's the whole idea. How much does that? And I teach it to my students all the time. When someone comes up and says, "Oh, he said I'm ugly," I'm like, "Are you ugly? If you're not ugly, what are you worried about, right? Why do you even care what that seventh grader over there thinks? He's just a seventh grader. Don't worry about it. You're going to move on with your life." So that's kind of how I look at it, as I get to know people first. Dave knows this. I don't open my mouth, throw my foot in right out the door like he tends to do sometimes.
Sometimes.
Sometimes, a lot of times.
Almost all the time.
But his heart's in the same exact place. I'm pretty shy at first. I'm pretty quiet. I will stay back and observe and try to get to understand somebody a little bit. And then when I start to, then it's like, all right, let's dig into what are you afraid of? What worries you? What scares you? What are your insecurities? And that's the kind of stuff I like to know about people, because that makes them people to me. And then let's talk about that. Let's get it out of the way. Let's get the elephant out of the room so we can move on and enjoy ourselves. So I like to be pretty blunt about it, but initially with strangers, you got to be careful and make sure they know who you are and where you're coming from and where your heart's at first. So I can understand, like we said last week, bumper sticker slogans I'm not a fan of, because you're throwing something out there and it's like, yeah, we're not really taking the time to dig into it appropriately, though, are we? So it's tougher for me, but I mean, not tougher. It's tougher in some situations like Dave's talking about, where you just get people that, they're just using it. They're using it as excuses. They're using it as reasons to feel a sense of power themselves, right? And sometimes, like he was joking about earlier, but sometimes throwing it at us and saying, oh, you have all the power, and then so therefore I get to overpower you. This is not in the spirit of everything we've been talking about from the first place, right? And the idea that we all have a seat at the table, we're all welcome. So anyways, those are my thoughts on that.
I like to have deep conversations with people a lot. The one thing that I suck at is politics, because of the fact that I can't remember how many senators we've got, who's a senator. Hell, I don't even know what district we're in right now. So, I can have the top shelf of it, the icing, and talk about that, what everybody's really talking about. But when it comes down to who's who, that's when I start looking ignorant, and I don't want to look ignorant in a conversation like that. So politics become a problem. But sometimes people wear that politics on their sleeve, just like they do their religions and everything else. So it's a different world we live in. But so let's talk about something.
I love it when people wear it on their sleeves, their emotions or whatever it is. Wear it on your sleeve, but be willing to talk about it. If you're going to walk out wearing silly stuff, you can't turn around and be like, oh my gosh, why do I got to explain to myself to everybody?
Conversation goes both ways.
You know that this is drawing attention to you. You obviously want to talk about something, or or do you just want us to stare, and so that you can feel sorry for yourself? You know what I mean? Like there's a huge difference between that and saying, hey, let's wear it on your cool. Who are you? Cool. Let's talk about it, though. You can't walk in and be explosive in your personality and then say, by the way, we're not going to talk about any of this. It's all off limits. Let's just talk about the sky and the weather.
Yeah. Well, leading into a interesting conversation that I was having with you a couple weeks ago, I love listening to historical podcasts, true crime, stuff like that. Love history. I'm one of those people that absolutely loves the truth behind the scenes in history. I don't necessarily like it when a movie or a storyline is changed just to make it more interesting, because sometimes things are more interesting in real life than they are in the story that's put out there for us. But one of the things that I thought was really interesting, would be a good question, is what is a historical moment or historical time or story that you know about, or you've always liked, that you have always wanted to see put into a big movie or a TV series of some sort that you would really get into? We'll start with Diana.
This was a tough one for me, just because I feel like between Lifetime and like Netflix, everyone's coming out with like some docu-series or some dramatized like film or whatever. I really like the royal family. I think they're very interesting. I don't always agree with them, but just I've gone to England and learning about how Parliament works, and you have the House of Lords and the House of Commons. That's always intrigued me. But then when you look back at it, there's like already so many different Lifetime movies and, like B-list movies or whatever about them. And then they have the whole, which ironically I haven't watched, they have The Crown. And that spans like years of the whole British monarchy. So it's a tough one for me. I also thought a little bit, I'm like, well, we're going through some really interesting times right now. So like the pandemic and everything, but then I'm like, do I necessarily want to see that on screen because I was part of it? Maybe not so much. And then
maybe that's one where we could start making things up about it, right?
Yeah,
Make it a little bit more exciting.
And everything else, I don't know. I'm big into like Moulin Rouge and like that era things. But again, Moulin Rouge, like that was one of the most famous movies of them all, which it was fictionalized.
I would
Um,
love to see that in a Broadway play if they could do it.
yeah, I heard
That would
it's
be
phenomenal.
amazing.
My best friend's gone like so many times.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that whole time period where you have like this prim and proper society, but kind of sort of underground. You have like this whole burlesque movement forming, and like that was a form of entertainment. That's always intrigued me. What else do I like? Like the golden age of Hollywood. Like I could get sucked into those documentaries and docu-series. Netflix had one, I think, literally called Hollywood. This was during the pandemic, and it was a scripted series, but it was loosely based on true stories. And the main character, I don't remember what actor cameoed in there. I think it was Rock Hudson, but it was all about like how they ran this gas station in Los Feliz, but it was a front for prostitution.
Hmm.
And yeah, like Rock Hudson, I think they said would like frequented. I don't know if that's real or if it was just written in that way, but it's just so interesting to me, that juxtaposition of a prim and proper society. I think we get that no matter what era it is. You want to look all value and I have good morals, but then the complete opposite, like everyone loves a good seedy time. Like you can't deny that. So I guess maybe more of that.
It makes them look more human to us when we find out,
Yeah, for
oh, so that's
sure.
what you were really doing. I think that's why I like looking at that's the first thing I do. If I see a historical movie come out, the first thing I want to know is, okay, how true is this?
Yeah.
How close? And I absolutely love movies that get like so realistic that it's like, oh, that actually happened. I love things like when Band of Brothers, that was amazing because I read a lot of the books, World War II books and the Pacific. I just thought a lot of that stuff was really cool. Right now, what really brought this up is I've been listening to different podcasts, and I came across this guy that he's about the same age of all of us, and he watched Deadwood, he watched Tombstone, he watched a couple other Young Guns, and he absolutely loved it. We all loved it. Those are great movies, some of our favorites out there. But he wanted to know the real story behind it. How accurate was it? So he started doing the research, going through it, and he ended up making his own podcast. And he's been going through every single historical moment. And I came home the other day and was just telling Cora, I was like, "Oh my God, Tombstone! Did you know this, this, and that? We thought we knew this, but it's just really cool to see that kind of stuff." So to me, there's a lot of them that are out there. I have one in particular I want to talk about, but first I want to find out what Corey's movie is. I know he's got thousands of them, but just pick one for now.
Yeah, I do have thousands of them. And the golden age of Hollywood's fun for me too. I've always enjoyed that history. There's something very haunting and ghostly about the
Yes.
golden age of Hollywood that appeals to me too. But yeah, I love Cowboy West, the founding of the country, that time period's incredible. But I'm a particularly big fan of the first half of the 20th century and the a lot of the Gilded Age stuff, right? And so one of my favorite authors, Eric Larson, writes it's historical fiction, but not historical fiction. Sorry, it's not fictional. It's straight up history. But he does put it into a really cool narrative form. And he has written stuff about like Nikola Tesla. I've always wanted to see something of that, really dig into everything that happened between Edison and Tesla. I've always wanted to see that. But of all of Eric Larson's books, the most interesting topic that he grazed is one that I've always been interested in. And I really want to see them make it a movie. And that was the World's Columbian Exposition, right? The World's Fair, the Chicago World's Fair, and H.H. Holmes, right? So the simultaneous building of the Chicago World Fair while they were building all of that, and then you have H.H. Holmes over here, the first serial killer in the United States, right? Technically was active before and after Jack the Ripper, but they didn't discover him until after Jack the Ripper. But he was using that Chicago World Fair to get just all kinds of crazy amounts of victims into what they ended up calling the Castle of Terror, or his horror hotel, right? But the idea, and again, it's like she was saying with the juxtaposition between the human achievement that occurs in what they call the White City, right? The Chicago World Fair, and that the amount of human achievement, right? They flipped a literally solid gold light switch and flipped on over 1 million light bulbs, and it was one of the first times a lot of people had seen light bulbs. It's where Hershey bought his first chocolate machine. It's where a lot of them saw some of the earliest automobiles, telephones. Of course,
Absolutely.
Tesla was there. When they flipped that switch, there was a choir of 5,000 people that sang hallelujah. And they invented what was it, concrete, or like at least the quickreat, the spray painting, like so many things went into creating this that are now pretty commonplace. Just this huge I think the Pledge of Allegiance, children said the Pledge of Allegiance, like in the style that it's said now, was like one of the first times they had done that there as well. So it's just this huge feat of human engineering. And then in the middle of all of that, the effort that H.H. Holmes put into using all of that to be the exact opposite side of humanity. And some of the most horrific and dark and no less ingenious, right? No less a level of ingenuity than what was going on with the Chicago World Fair. Without his brain, heart, or lack of soul, or whatever it was twisting him the way that he was, he could have been one of the great men creating this as well. But instead, he's over here just in the seediest, darkest parts of human nature and doing some of the most horrific things to people. And Eric Larson's book's called The Devil in the White City. And if you've never read it, it's a fantastic book.
Didn't Leonardo DiCaprio buy the rights to that?
Yeah, he bought the rights, but it's been like 20 something years, man.
Yes.
Literally, because I was looking at writing a script for it once upon a time, and me and my writing partner gave up on it because he had bought the rights, and we were like, oh yeah, we're not. And they were talking about, DiCaprio and Scorsese were going to do it together. And
Well, if there's anybody out there right
lined
now
up
that
so many
knows,
other projects that I don't know when it's going to happen or if it's going to happen, and I really want to see it. And I want
if
him to do
anybody out there knows
Fascinating.
Leonardo right now, have him get a hold of you. Come on, we want to watch this movie,
Tweet us. Or X
yeah,
us, I guess is what it's
fascinating
called.
subject.
right?
Yeah.
And no, that's so fascinating, and almost connects back to what you and I spoke about last week, Corey, with like paranormal. I thought of Zach Bagans' museum, and he had a whole room full of like serial killer artifacts. And like,
Mhm.
it's unfortunate, but it is a part of our history. And there's just a natural morbid curiosity to learn why people are the way they are and why they did that. And there is some sort of twisted genius that could have been used for good but instead was used for the most
Yeah.
evil. And it's so true. There's a curiosity about that. We want to see that on film. There's a reason why true crime is such a popular genre on TV, podcasts, you name it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and there's a like the dissertation that I plan on doing. I actually studied serial killers and their relationship with the media. And again, it starts with H.H. Holmes and Jack the Ripper. But I posit the idea that there's a very unique relationship between the media, and that the what we know of as the traditional serial killer is a beast that's pretty unique to the 20th century. Something fallen by the wayside now that we're in the 21st century. It showed up at the beginning of the century. But you're right, it's absolutely a part of our history, and I think it's important to pay attention to that because there's a connection there to the relationship with the media. And then now you have the school shootings and you have the mass suicide. All these different things that are going on now have kind of shifted in that direction, and they have a very specific relationship with the media, which in turn means they have a specific relationship with the audience, which is us. And so it's
Don't
different.
they
The whole
say
thing,
if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it?
right?
Yep, exactly.
100%.
Well, speaking of history, that was one of my movies I've been wanting to see put together. I would like to see Corey put it together if he could and write it. But so it's the California Water Wars. It is such a deep storyline. A lot of people don't realize that Los Angeles would not be Los Angeles if we didn't steal our water from the Owens Valley up north, 270 miles north of us. And it was a desolate area that was relying on some water coming out of the San Gabriel Mountains every once in a while, and then it would dry out. And people were coming into the city, people wanted to use it, and until Mulholland came along, and he was an Irish immigrant that was working in digging ditches and stuff like that. And he was able to come out and start coming up with ideas, and he worked for building dams, and him and the mayor had decided to, that they can get the water from up in the Owens Valley, up on the east side of the Sierra Nevadas. And that was a thriving town. And so not to tell the whole story, but they were able to go up there, and the mayor, and which a lot of people say is pretty seedy, started buying up land up there. LA started buying up land. Government officials started buying land from the farmers, not telling them what their underlying reason was. And what they were trying to do was buy all that land in that area so that they can divert the lake that was up there down through the aqueduct all the way down into Los Angeles, so that Los Angeles can have the water. And so that there became wars. The farmers got upset. Some farmers sold it, were happy to ride off into the sunset. The other farmers that had been there for generations were pissed off. They got to the point where they started bombing, dams that were up there. People were getting shot. The whole story of building the California aqueduct all the way down is like watching, an entire series of Into the West, or building the Transcontinental Railroad with Hell on Wheels. And it's really cool, the inside stories. I mean, people don't realize that Kaiser Permanente was developed from helping out with they started medical in the tent towns. The steel workers that were doing it, the food, the things that went down. And then near the end of this whole story, after it was supposedly a great story, he builds a dam called the St. Francis Dam up here in the mountains. And in order to, they kind of cut around the corners, and they raised the dam about 10 feet higher than they were supposed to originally without widening it. And in the middle of the night, there was the dam broke at about 11:59 p.m. and this dam killed 500 people all the way out, and it flew all the way through Santa Clarita, pushed all the way out to the ocean. They were finding bodies down in Mexico in the ocean. And Mulholland never forgave himself for that. There was a whole court battle with it. There's just so many different storylines that came involved. It's like you can make 3 or 4 seasons about it. And I think it'd be amazing just to dive in and really, kind of like they did with Titanic. I used to not like that storyline, but take characters and mix them in with real characters. You get to see these people, follow them through the whole series of how it goes, ending with the dam breaking and how the court battles went. And we can go up and see that dam now. The bricks are still there, the cement is still there, it's all over the valley. It's just, and this stuff, and they don't really put it out there. So there's a lot of really cool things that, I mean, that's just one movie, you can't do that all in a movie. It's going to have to be an entire TV series. So whenever you're ready to start writing that, Corey, let me know, because I'd be definitely want to watch that. Heck, I want to act in it. I don't care. Just don't wait till I have to be, Mulholland. I don't want to be that old when I start doing it.
Well, his hair went shock white within 18 months from the stress, right? So
yeah,
you got time.
It was, yeah. It was crazy. But yeah, it's stories like that I mean, man, when you really get to hear it, the Jesse James story, all that stuff that's out there, there's so many really, really cool things. And that's why I love it. I'm about ready. What's the new movie or the new TV series that's coming out? It came out in the 80s. They redid it about China. Was it China?
Oh, Shogun.
Yeah, I've seen the previews for that. That looks amazing, and I'm hoping that that's pretty accurate to like what really happened back then. So I like that. I really like to watch it because we can't live in that period of time. So it's my time to dive in and feel like I'm there. I'm a fly on the wall. I'm living it, and that's what's exciting to me. And when they start tweaking it, and it kind of gives a false sense of history, because we all know most people today, they don't look at the real history. They look at whatever they saw on TV, and that's their history. And then they start repeating that to people, and then it's just one big vicious circle. So
that's until they create really, really cool virtual reality that you can put on and go visit these places and maybe spend the last 2 hours of the Titanic sinking walking around the ship yourself, seeing everything, right?
What do you mean the last 2 hours? I don't want to be sinking with it. I think you mean the 2 hours before it starts to sink?
It's not the Matrix. You don't die in there in the game. If you
die, you got to go watch it break up below.
There's a great museum though, the Titanic exhibition. If either of you guys have been.
Oh yeah, I've been in the one.
Some of the traveling ones. I've never been to one of the larger ones, but
yeah,
the best one we went to was in Branson, Missouri. That was amazing. I really liked it. And I loved the Titanic before the movie had come out, and it was like a 20-year battle between Corey and I on this one. But at the end of the day, I love the Queen Mary too. I wish they'd bring that back. I wish they'd bring Dark Harbor back. There's a lot of things I wish they'd bring back.
Just
So
talking about that last week.
yeah, we went to Dark Harbor every single year. It's been a tradition for us, so we're just dying for that to come back to go to the Queen Mary. And man, I love history, love all
Queen
that stuff.
Mary's open. I don't know if they're bringing Dark Harbor back, but Queen Mary's open again.
Yeah, well, hopefully they do. That was part of the
They
fun.
do. I'm joining you guys. Count me in.
Exactly. We'll definitely let you know.
Glad.
Well, it was awesome, guys. I had a lot of fun, even with the video demon I had in the beginning of the show, So other than that, like usual, it was a blast, guys. I look forward to seeing you guys next week. And like we said in the very beginning, make sure you guys are telling everybody about the show. It seems like it's taken off. People are really liking it. Hopefully you guys are having a lot of fun watching it. Tell everybody you know. We'll see you next time. Peace out. Take care.